Hey everyone, this is the inaugural episode. Just getting off work, and I wanted to get something out. You can't just create a page, say you're going to do some stuff, and then never show up to do it. So I didn't want to wait too long to get started. So I figured I'd get this inaugural episode out and kind of explain what we're looking to do on this. I won't call it a podcast, at least not right now. It's just a page for me to express some thoughts, and so I'm going to start. I'll go through like the purpose of what I'm trying to do with this Pastor Dad page, and I'm going to say I almost said podcast. I'm going to end up saying that anyway. So the purpose is really just I'm a teacher, right? I'm a teacher in a lot of ways. At work, I do a lot of facilitation, a lot of instruction. I my life at home with the family, of course, I'm teaching all the time as a dad, and not least of all as a pastor. So I find myself constantly with thoughts that get left on the editing room floor, if you will. Like things I don't have time to say, things I wanted to say but maybe shouldn't in that particular environment. So the purpose is really that the pastor teacher in me really never has enough time, and this is how old school I am. I'm using a notebook to sort of just jot down my thoughts, and I think I'll do that for every episode. Just scribble down some notes. I tend to overthink things, so I'll put together too much of a plan. It'll be too scripted, and it won't be real. So I'm just going to jot down a real quick outline each time, and for those topics that come in that maybe I will need to spend some more time researching, I'll do that. I won't try to give you shoddy answers to things or say things that aren't true. That's one of the whole points of this is to speak the truth. So um, and that's thinking about that, the pulpit gives me a lot of opportunity to speak on matters of faith, matters of the Bible, and the intersection of faith and culture. And so I do a lot of that, but I a lot of times I find myself at the end of a sermon, at the end of a Sunday, sort of having some regrets. Maybe sometimes the regret is I said more than I wanted to say. Sometimes the regret is I didn't say enough, and I feel like I shortchanged. And so there will be times when I say something either on a Sunday or on this podcast that I'll just give into it. But I'll say something that you think, man, he didn't go far enough, or he went way too far. That's just the nature of being a fairly public person, even in a small town with a small church. But you say things that you can't take back, right? You can't. I often say we are masters of our unspoken words and the slaves a slave to the ones that we shouldn't have said. But we don't get do overs or take backs, and so we just move on, right? But the pulpit is not always the right place for me to express things as fully as I would like, and so this may give me a place to vent some of that additional information or additional explanation that perhaps I didn't get a chance in a 30 or 40-minute segment, or some of you saying an hour, as depending on how long I'm preaching. But the pulpit's not always the right spot to do that. Maybe even more important than sort of being a supplement to the pulpit is really a supplement to my ability to, uh, I suppose, cover every topic that I'd ever want to cover for my kids as their dad. And like, of course, as their father, I'm very concerned that they know truth. I'm very concerned that they can critically think and they can navigate some of these issues on their own. But we do that best when we have a good, where we know, when we know what true north is, when we have a good idea of what true north looks like. You can judge everything else based upon that sort of foundational concept. And so I would love to discuss these things with my kids now. Three of them teenagers, and the time just isn't there. You say all the things you can when they're younger and they're sort of not in as many activities, but now we're all scattered to the four cardinal directions. It seems like all the time, and so this is going to be a place, maybe even primarily for this, that I can in a lasting way, these files, maybe however long Facebook exists or YouTube or whatever else, that these will be out there in the ether for them to go back and listen to, if there's ever an interest for that. But that'll be kind of a guiding light for me. Covering topics will be conversations that come up with the kids, and things I want them to know. And so that'll be a lot of the motivation for what I'm doing is really for them, and that's because I needed to have a motivation that would carry me into actually doing this. Um, my big hesitation, I've over the years, people have asked me, "Are you going to do a podcast? You should do a podcast." They felt like maybe, being complimentary. They thought maybe I had something to say or worth listening to, and so I've always thought now there's better voices out there. There are people out there saying this in a better way, more educated, more just more polished, and so I always hesitated. I think I want to believe it's because of humility. Like I just don't assume that the world needs another voice behind a microphone. And so that's what I felt like I was, just another voice behind a microphone. But my kids will give me that motivation to say, this is a catalog of things I can address, things I can talk through, and these archives, maybe forever, however long they're there, will be there. And so that's a huge motivation. How did I come up with the name? You might be asking. The Pastor Dad is not Pastor Dad podcast or Pastor Dad channel, Facebook page. Not real creative, but I just really it is just that it's a combination of my two of my most important roles. My most important relationship is with the Lord, and after that, my wife. I would kind of put it like 2A and 2B. My wife being 2A as the priority that the Bible describes she should be to me. 2B would be my kids, and so there's just nothing that compares to them and their worth to me, their value to me. But I suppose I vocationally and the way that I spend my time, so much of it is consumed by the nights and evenings. And I would love for my days to be full of spending time doing this, but studying the scriptures and being prepared to preach and being prepared to answer questions for people and tackle difficult issues and subjects. And so those two roles, like the idea that being the pastor in me and the dad in me, kind of just it gave me the two motivations, the two sort of twin motivations as a teacher. And I've kind of already mentioned this in the first portion, but the funny thing is the reason that kind of landed in a place where that could be a name for this is that my two oldest, and I think I knew this before. I'm almost certain that I knew this before. But I didn't think about it, and it wasn't in mind when I think when it came up with this name. But my two oldest kids both have me in their phones as a contact, and my name there is Pastor Dad. So I just thought that was kind of unique and funny, and to think that every time I call them or text them, they get my contact comes up as Pastor Dad. And so it was kind of an endearing thing. That they would both have me. I think independently. I don't think they talked to each other about doing that, but just independently came up with that idea, and decided to put me in their phone that way. So that really nothing special, nothing fancy. I hope to get better sort of graphics for the Facebook page, and maybe eventually if I move some of this content onto YouTube. We'll have the same banner photo or cover photo and profile image there as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the scope too. So the scope of this is you see the genesis and why I'm doing it is the pastor dad in me. And but what's the range of ideas? What's the scope that we're planning on covering? And the scope really is if you look at that seal on the cover photo, it really talks about four things: faith, family, culture, and truth. And I have in the seal, I'm going to try to do a better job getting that more professionally put together. I just used AI, but you see faith and truth are located on opposite polar ends of each other. So those will kind of be what dictate my true north would be my faith, but my bedrock interest is the truth. And so it just happens that they kind of sit north and south on that seal. But quite intentionally so, and I designed it that way for that reason. And then, of course, as it relates to family and culture, these are just two of the things that I think are important. Certainly, family, and then culture. We tend not to talk about things, and we tend to mute ourselves, censor ourselves, because in mixed company, as I said on Sunday, if you were at church on Sunday, or you watch on YouTube, I talked about how we tend to self censor. There's certain demographics that do that more than others. For various reasons, we see that particularly in the universities, that people just don't. And I can attest, I self censored when I was taking classes a few years ago, because you know that you're going to just get trounced if you dare have traditional views on things. And it's like, when did that become? When did that become forbidden to have views that humanity has held for eons? I mean, it just seems kind of ridiculous that would be something we'd be questioning now, and actually not just questioning it, but it's understood that that's not within the purview of ideas that you can have. And so I want to talk about all those things. I want to be able to go deeper than I can go on a Sunday. I want to be able to go deeper than I typically do in a message, because one of the biggest challenges I tell people that are new at public speaking and new at giving sermons is that it's as important how you decide what doesn't go into the sermon as what does, because our tendency is to think if we had a good thought, it deserves to be in the sermon. And the reality is that not all of it can be in there, or else you'll be doing too much. And so when I have a guest speaker who's a little bit less experienced, we might talk to them about, how can you decide what gets to be in the sermon? Is it helping you tell the story that is leading up to your conclusion, or not? And there's a lot that gets left out, and so there'll be opportunities and times when an episode is kind of centered on the sermon, and I wanted to say some things, and they either didn't fit in the time frame, or they weren't something that I felt like deserved a pulpit sort of expression. Maybe it's good enough for at home in front of the microphone, but not necessarily the pulpit, and that's an important distinction. But being able to go deeper on things, and then also, I hope this becomes a featured part. I joked with the two or three, the post I put up was the two or three of you that find this useful or have any interest in what I might have to say, and a number of you responded by following the page, and so I appreciate you for doing that. But I want you to know that as it grows, if it grows, and I'm open to whether or not it does, maybe it turns out to be just something that's more useful for me than it is for anyone else, and that's fine too. But I want to be willing to take and answer questions. So if you have theological questions, you have political questions, you have things that you think, I value his opinion, or I value his thinking. Maybe I would like to know what he thinks about this or that thing. I'll tell you from the outset, I'd love for that to be a featured part of the episodes or the videos that I record. I think more than is important what I think is what is true, and it comes back to our one of the four kind of cardinal things is faith, family, culture, and truth. And so more so than I hope you just take my word for it, any of the things that I say on this platform is I hope that you will be good scholars on your own and go and look things up, study things, and test them. Nobody should just accept something because they like the way it sounded. It should be rooted in truth. It should be rooted in fact. And not much of the world seems concerned with that right now, and that gets thrown back and forth across the aisle politically, and I think in every other sphere of discourse that for which there tends to be polar opposites. These accusations get thrown back and forth, but use your critical thinking and work through that yourself. Does which one resonates as more true? Which one which idea or opinion seems to be in keeping with other, foundational truths that you hold? Because we've made everything so abstract. We've made everything so nuanced that nothing is black and white anymore. Not everything is. There is room for nuance. There is room for discussion and debating the finer aspects of things. But there are some things that are just ironclad. There are some things that are just 2 + 2 is 4. And if you mess with that, if you're willing to mess with that, then I know you're willing to mess with anything. And truth doesn't really matter to you. And so you work you work your way out from those truths that are the most settled truths and building blocks or foundational blocks of what we think that we know, and then it'll help you kind of think through the more complex and the more nuanced conversation. So I hope this is going to be fun. I hope it's a place where we can practice what we've talked about on Sunday, and that is to have open dialogue, talk to people. It is so important that people know that these views are out there, because when you disassociate the view from humanity, it becomes something that can just be destroyed. And insofar as real human beings made in the image of God hold various opinions for lesser or more, every opinion is not created equal. So there'll be opinions that are held that are, for good or for bad, for good or bad reasons. But insofar as it's a human being that was made in the image of God that holds it, I want to be kind and gracious to that person. And we're going to try to model that on this page. I hope that'll be the case in the comments. I can't control everybody's comments. And as much as I can, I don't want to censor people's comments. I won't probably have the time to respond to, if ends up being long diatribes, I probably won't have time to respond to all of it. Maybe that'll be a follow-up video, because that's faster than typing everything out. But that's it. The Pastor Dad channel, Pastor Dad Facebook page, Pastor Dad podcast, if you will. But that's what we're trying to do. We're interested in truth and of all kinds, but particularly in faith, family, and culture. And I'd love to see some of your questions in the comments, some of the things that you'd like to talk about. Maybe it's not so much a question, it's just something you'd like to see, me do a video on, so that we can have a place to discuss it. So don't hesitate, send those questions in, and we'll go from there. And I have no idea if this is going to be a weekly thing. I hope I can record at least weekly so that we can kind of keep a regular cadence. But I don't know. I never can tell with 2 jobs and 4 kids and everything else. I never do know or take for granted what time I will have each week. And so we'll see. But I'm going to plan for something around weekly. And that will be fairly easy because of the cadence of the sermons that I preach. There's always stuff I want to talk about that I didn't get a chance to talk about during the sermon. So that itself will be, opportunity to come back and do some recording. So anyway, hope you find this channel useful. Hope you find the page useful, and the thoughts that we share on it useful. Until next time, we'll see you.